Hour 72. The silence was deafening. Across every human world, in every colony and station, in every bunker and hideout, people waited. The 72 hours were up. The ultimatum had expired, and the Valkyrie hadn't left. Kai stood in the Resistance Command Center watching the holographic display. Valkyrie ships still orbited Earth. Valkyrie soldiers still patrolled Mars. Valkyrie governors still occupied their positions on dozens of worlds. "They're not going to leave peacefully," Linda Washington said beside him. "They think we're bluffing. Then it's time to show them we're not." Kai activated the system-wide communication array. His signal would reach every human resistance cell, every sleeper agent, every soldier waiting in the shadows. "Execute Operation Fury," he said simply, and hell was unleashed. Earth Orbit Commander. Zektel watched his tactical display light up with alerts. Everywhere, all at once. "Report," he barked. But they had never fought an enemy that had spent millennia learning how to win with less. The real battle was just beginning. Inside Sanctuary City's command center, the Council's military leaders watched the humans' first engagement with a mixture of confusion and shock. "They're retreating?" General Throck growled, his three eyes narrowing at the tactical display. "After 5 minutes of combat?" Ambassador Chen Wei, observing from the command center, smiled slightly. "They're not retreating, General. They're repositioning. It's the same thing." "No," interjected Commander Okonkwo, who stood beside Chen Wei. "Retreating is running away. Repositioning is choosing your next battlefield. There's a difference." On the screens, they watched as the human teams led the Krell swarm on a chase across 5 kilometers of corrupted terrain. The Krell, confident in their numerical superiority, pursued aggressively. "What are they doing?" asked Counselor Vexthar, who had arrived to personally observe the operation. "They're leading the Krell toward Position 7. That defensive emplacement was abandoned yesterday." "Not abandoned," Chen Wei corrected. "Prepared." As they watched, the human team suddenly scattered in perfectly coordinated directions, disappearing into prepared positions. The Krell swarm, unable to stop its momentum, surged forward into what had been a defensive position. Marcus pressed the detonator. The entire area erupted in fire. The humans hadn't abandoned the position. They had turned it into a trap. Hundreds of improvised explosive devices, created from salvaged council materials and human ingenuity, detonated simultaneously. The Krell swarm disappeared in a massive fireball. But Marcus wasn't watching the explosion. He was watching the Krell's response patterns on his tactical display. "There," he said to his team. "See how they're pulling reinforcements from Sector 9? That's their rally behavior. They do it every time they take significant losses." He switched channels. "Team Foxtrot, move to intercept those reinforcements. Small arms only, hit and fade. I want them confused about where we actually are." Through the command center's displays, the council leaders watched as the humans executed their strategy. Small teams striking from unexpected angles, using weapons that seemed laughably primitive, then disappearing before the Krell could respond effectively. "Incredible," whispered Ambassador Lorien, her crystalline form pulsing with something that might have been admiration. "They're not trying to destroy the Krell, they're trying to control them," Commander Okonkwo finished. "Make them react instead of act. Force them to fight on human terms." General Throck's mandibles clicked thoughtfully. "This is how your species fights? With tricks and traps?" Chen Wei's expression was serious. "General, we fight with everything. Tricks, traps, courage, creativity, and sometimes pure stubbornness. We learned a long time ago that you don't win wars by being stronger. You win by being smarter, more adaptable, and more willing to do what it takes." On the screen, Marcus's voice crackled over the command channel. "All teams, Phase 1 complete. Krell command structure is disrupted in Sectors 4 through 12. Beginning Phase 2, deep penetration and infrastructure damage. With any luck, we'll make them so confused they won't know which way is up." Counselor Vexthar turned to Chen Wei. "Your sergeant said this isn't about destroying the Krell. What is it about?" "Buying time," she replied simply. "The Council needs 3 more days to evacuate the civilians. My soldiers will give you those 3 days, whatever it takes. But there are only 300 of your warriors against 2 million Krell. The mathematics." Chen Wei's smile was sharp. "General, humans have never been very good at math. Especially when someone tells us the odds. That's when we do our best work. Below them, In the corrupted wasteland outside Sanctuary City, 300 human soldiers pushed deeper into enemy territory, armed with primitive weapons and centuries of hard-won experience. The Galactic Council was about to learn what it meant when humans went to war. 36 hours into the operation, and Marcus hadn't slept. Sleep was a luxury you couldn't afford when fighting an enemy that didn't need it. The Krell never tired, never rested, never stopped. Their biological nature meant they could fight continuously as long as they had biomass to consume. But humans had learned long ago how to function on caffeine, adrenaline, and sheer stubborn determination. Size, we got a problem. Corporal Liu called from his position behind a collapsed wall. Marcus low-crawled over, keeping his profile minimal. Through his rifle scope, he could see what Liu meant. The Krell had established a breeding pit, a massive organic structure where they converted captured biomass into new warriors, and they were feeding civilians into it. Marcus felt the rage build in his chest, but he forced it down. Rage made you stupid. Rage got you killed. He'd learned that lesson on Earth, watching good soldiers die because they let emotion override training. How many civilians? He asked quietly. Maybe 300. They're in some kind of stasis cocoons, still alive but sedated. Marcus studied the tactical situation. The breeding pit was heavily guarded, at least 1,000 Krell warriors plus organic turrets that tracked movement. A frontal assault would be suicide. Call it in, Marcus decided. Get me a direct line to Commander Okonkwo. 2 minutes later, Okonkwo's voice crackled through his comm. Reeves, what do you need? Found a breeding pit with live civilians. Approximately 300 souls. Requesting permission to extract, there was a pause. Marcus knew what she was thinking. 300 lives versus the risk to his entire 40-person team. By pure mathematics, it wasn't worth it. But humans had never been very good at pure mathematics. Permission granted, Okonkwo said finally. But Reeves, don't do anything stupid. Never do, ma'am. That's what worries me. You've got 6 hours until the next evacuation window. Make them count. Marcus switched to his team channel. Listen up. We're going loud and messy. Lou Torres, you're on breach. Hendricks, your demo. Everyone else suppressing fire on my mark. We hit hard, we hit fast, and we get those civilians out. He looked at his soldiers, tired, dirty, running on nothing but determination and whatever stimulants they had left. Every one of them nodded. Private Chen, Marcus called to the youngest member of his team, a kid who'd lied about his age to join the military just like Marcus had done 25 years ago. You see that organic turret? The big one that looks like a flower made of nightmares? Yes, Sergeant. When I give the signal, put a thermite grenade down its throat. Can you make that throw? The kid calculated the distance, wind factors, and elevation. 80% confidence, Sergeant. Make it 90. Those civilians are counting on it. Private Chen nodded, his young face hardening with determination. Marcus took a breath, checked his weapon one more time, and thought about all the battles that had brought him to this moment. The Himalayan tunnels, where he'd learned that sometimes the only way forward was through. The Saharan wastes, where he'd learned that water was more valuable than bullets. Mars Colony uprising, where he'd learned that fighting for something bigger than yourself was the only thing that mattered. On my mark, he said quietly. 3, 2, 1, mark! What happened next would be taught in military academies across the galaxy for generations to come. Private Chen's thermite grenade flew in a perfect arc, landing precisely inside the organic turret's firing aperture. The turret exploded in a shower of burning biological matter, temporarily blinding the Krell sensors. Liu and Torres breached through a weak point in the breeding pit structure, their shotguns tearing through the organic walls. The rest of the team laid down suppressing, fire so intense that the Krell warriors couldn't organize a coherent response. Marcus and 3 others rushed into the breeding pit. The interior was a nightmare, pulsing walls, covered in what looked like veins, cocoons hanging from the ceiling like grotesque fruit. And in the center, the conversion vat where the Krell transformed biomass into warriors. Cut them down, Marcus ordered. Every cocoon! His soldiers worked with practiced efficiency, slicing through the organic bonds holding the cocoons. Civilians, Krillians, Dranthi, Viridians. Species Marcus had barely met, spilled out onto the floor, unconscious but alive. We've got maybe 2 minutes before this place is swarming with Krell, Liu warned. Marcus grabbed his radio. All teams, we need extraction at my position now. Outside, the other human teams executed a maneuver they'd practiced 100 times but never in combat conditions, of fighting withdrawal, while covering multiple extraction points. Simultaneously, combat engineers blew holes. In the Krell perimeter, snipers took out the organic sensors. Assault teams created chaos and confusion, making the Krell think the humans were attacking from 6 different directions at once. And in the middle of it all, Marcus's team carried 300 unconscious civilians through the burning hellscape of Krell territory. "This is insane," one of the younger soldiers gasped as they ran, a Dranthi civilian slung over his shoulders. "Welcome to human military doctrine," Marcus replied, helping carry a Krillian. "When the smart play is impossible, we do the insane play instead." They reached the extraction point, a cleared zone where Council transport ships could land for exactly 90 seconds before Krell anti-air made it too dangerous. Marcus could see the ships dropping through the smoke-filled sky. "Load them up," he ordered. "Combat wounded first, then civilians." The Krell were rallying now, thousands of warriors converging on their position. Marcus's team formed a defensive perimeter, their weapons creating a wall of metal and fire between the evacuating civilians and the enemy. "Reeves, you need to get on those ships." Okonkwo's voice crackled over the comm. "Negative, ma'am. Last one out, remember?" "That's an order, Sergeant." "Sorry, ma'am, you're breaking up." "Must be Krell interference." Marcus knew he wasn't fooling anyone, but he also knew Okonkwo understood. Leaders led from the front. That was another human tradition, earned through countless battles where officers who hid in the rear got their soldiers killed. The last civilian was loaded onto the last transport. The pilot's voice was urgent. "Sarge, we are out of time." "Go," Marcus ordered. "All teams fall back to Rally Point Echo." The transport lifted off as Krell warriors reached the perimeter. Marcus's team laid down covering fire, then broke into a full sprint, using every piece of cover, every tactical trick they'd learned. One soldier went down, hit by Krell acid. 2 others grabbed him, dragging him along. No one left behind. Another human tradition. They reached Rally Point Echo just as Council reinforcements arrived. A full company of Dranthi warriors in their advanced combat armor. Weapons that could vaporize a Krell warrior with a single shot. General Throck himself was leading them. The massive warrior looked at Marcus's exhausted, battered team with something like respect in his 3 eyes. "You extracted 300 civilians from a breeding pit with 40 soldiers?" he asked. 38, sir," Marcus corrected, nodding toward his 2 wounded. "But yes. Why would you risk your entire team for such small numbers?" "By any tactical calculation, it was not efficient." Marcus met the general's eyes. "General, humans don't fight efficient wars. We fight necessary ones. Those 300 civilians? They were someone's family, someone's friends. We lost 10,000 years perfecting the art of warfare, but we never forgot what we were fighting for." General Throck was silent for a long moment. Then he nodded slowly. "I think I am beginning to understand why the ambassador believes you can teach us. It is not your tactics, it is your reasons for fighting." "Our tactics come from our reasons, sir," Marcus replied. "We fight dirty because we fight for keeps. We take insane risks because the alternative is unacceptable. We never give up because humanity has never had the luxury of giving up." The general looked at the burning landscape around them, then at the exhausted human soldiers. "How much longer can you hold?" Marcus checked his tactical display. They'd been fighting for 36 hours straight. Ammunition was running low. Casualties were mounting. By any reasonable standard, they should withdraw. But humans had never been very reasonable. "As long as it takes, sir," Marcus replied. "We've still got civilians to evacuate. That means we've still got a mission." Back in Sanctuary City's command center, the Council's leaders were having a heated debate. "The humans have been in combat for 36 continuous hours," Councillor Vexthar said. "Their casualty rate is 12%. Their ammunition expenditure is far beyond sustainable. Yet they continue to engage the Krell with the same intensity. They're exhausted," Ambassador Lorien observed, studying the biometric data. "By Council standards, they should have collapsed hours ago. How are they still fighting?" Chen Wei, who had been quietly observing, finally spoke. "Because humans have always fought exhausted. In Earth's ancient wars, soldiers marched for days with minimal food and sleep, then fought battles that decided the fate of nations. In our modern conflicts, special forces operated behind enemy lines for weeks with no resupply. We learned to function beyond what should be physically possible because we had to. But that's... Vexthar searched for the word. Unnatural. Yes, Chen Wei agreed simply. It's unnatural, unsustainable, and inadvisable by every standard of modern military doctrine. It's also how humans have survived every existential threat we've ever faced. We push beyond what's reasonable because the alternative is extinction. General Throck entered the command center, his armor still smoking from combat. I have fought in 200 battles, he said quietly. I have commanded armies that conquered star systems. But I have never seen anything like your soldiers, Ambassador. They fight with equipment inferior to ours, yet they achieve results we could not. How? Chen Wei considered the question carefully. General, your warriors are the best your species can produce. Genetically enhanced, cybernetically augmented, trained from birth for combat. They are perfect soldiers. Yes, Throck agreed. And yet your imperfect soldiers are more effective. Why? Because perfection is brittle, Chen Wei replied. Your warriors have been optimized for the wars you expected to fight. When the Krell presented something unexpected, your perfect tactics failed. But human soldiers? We've never fought a perfect war. We've always had to adapt, improvise, overcome. We've spent thousands of years learning to win imperfectly. She pulled up footage of Marcus's team rescuing the civilians from the breeding pit. Watch Sergeant Reeves. He breaks a dozen tactical protocols in this operation. He risks his entire team for a numerically insignificant gain. By your standards, he's reckless. Yet he succeeded, Throck observed. Yes, because humans learned long ago that sometimes the mathematically illogical choice is the strategically correct one. Sometimes you do things not because they make sense, but because they're right. And sometimes the enemy expects you to be rational, so the irrational choice becomes the winning move. On the screens, they watched as human teams continued their operations across the Krell-controlled territory. Small groups moving independently, using tactics that seemed random but were actually carefully coordinated chaos. They're not trying to defeat the Krell, Vexthar realized suddenly. They're trying to control the battlefield itself. Now you're beginning to understand, Chen Wei said. Humans don't win by being stronger or having better technology. We win by making the battlefield work for us instead of our enemy. We learned that lesson fighting wars on Earth where the terrain, the weather, the local population, everything was a weapon if you knew how to use it. She zoomed in on one particular engagement where a human team was leading a Krell swarm through a collapsed industrial complex. Watch, they're going to... The humans disappeared into the structure. The Krell followed. Moments later, the entire building collapsed, triggered by carefully placed charges. Thousands of Krell warriors were buried under tons of rubble. They sacrificed valuable infrastructure, Throck noted. They sacrificed worthless infrastructure that the Krell already controlled, Chen Wei corrected. Now those Krell warriors are neutralized. Their biomass is trapped and unusable. And the rubble creates a barrier that channels future Krell movements exactly where my commanders want them. It's not about preserving resources. It's about using everything available, including what seems like losses, to achieve victory. The command center fell silent as the implications sank in. Finally, Counselor Vexthar spoke. Ambassador, if your soldiers can hold for another 36 hours, we can complete the civilian evacuation. The question is, can they? Chen Wei looked at the screens showing her exhausted, battered warriors still fighting across the burning landscape of Helios Prime. She thought about humanity's long history of impossible victories snatched from certain defeat. Counselor, there's an old human saying from one of Earth's ancient wars. The difficult we do immediately. The impossible takes a little longer. My soldiers have 36 hours. They'll hold. How can you be certain? Because they're human, she replied simply. And we've never learned how to quit. Outside Sanctuary City, Marcus Reeves checked his ammunition count, 2 magazines left, and looked at his exhausted team. Rally point Foxtrot in 15 minutes, he said. We'll rest for 1 hour, then back into the fight. Sarge, Private Chen asked, his young face showing the strain of continuous combat, do you really think we can hold for another day and a half? Marcus thought about all the battles he'd fought, all the times the odds had been against him, all the moments when quitting would have been easier than continuing. Son, let me tell you about the siege of New Baghdad, he...